Okay, let's talk about casting this. So the first step is to align the the plaster hard shell with the silicone mold. I kind of eyeball where the indentations are, these guys here. And then align that with the bottom piece that I've already got in place. It doesn't have to be exact, it's just to hold the overall shape as much as possible. And if you get it to line up like it's doing now, you'll see that the seam in the back, right here, is closing up, more or less. It'll appear a little bit in the plaster cast, but it's hardly recognizable. So then I'm going to just kind of gently flip it over, holding the alignment, and take the tape, painter's or masking tape is best, and around the base of the helmet, and tape it up. It takes a couple of rounds because you want the tape to tape to itself. It's not going to tape to the plaster, the outside shell. So I'm holding the shell together, kind of clamping it shut while I tape the tape to itself. And I'll do this for a couple of rounds. It doesn't need to be super secure because this comes off with every cast that you take. You can see right now though that the plaster shell is more or less aligned. I'm on round 3 or 4 and I'm gonna call that good. So then I've improvised a base. If I could only tear this. Alright, I've improvised the base using the painter's tape. Let me shift this. Painter's tape, the actual helmet, holding this in place. It's gonna kind of wobble around, that's okay, but you can see that the seam is closed up and you'll be able to rotate it around while you cast it. So next up, you have to mix up the plaster. If you don't mix up enough, you're gonna have to scramble to mix more. If you mix up too little, or if you mix up too much, then you'll waste. So it's kind of a guessing game and a dance. I'm gonna pour about that much, which we'll see how far that gets us. I've got some water here, and you want to incrementally add the water. Adding just a little bit to start, and then I'm going to kind of mash it in. It'll get absorbed pretty quickly. We're trying to mix this up so that it's at a pretty thick consistency, because obviously you don't want it running down the sides of the helmet when you actually make the cast. So here, this is kind of like heavy cream or something like that. You can see that instead of the consistency where when I pick it up like this, it doesn't run all over the place, and that's what we're going for. You want to mix it up enough so that there's not big chunks of dry plaster in there. And then because it's so thick, it's going to set up really quickly, so you need to move really fast. Okay, so moving quickly, I'm going to take it back over to the helmet. Move this guy out of the way. And glob it in there. So I'm trying to spread it out evenly. My first goal is to get a thin and even layer. I'm seeing that this might not be enough plaster that I've mixed up, and that's totally okay because you can mix up a subsequent layer and layer it over top. But it's nice to have one thin layer that's all been mixed at the same time so that it adheres to itself. And as you're pressing it in, you want to be kind of like firm. Be sure that you're getting into all of the crevices of the mold so that you don't have excessive air bubbles, that kind of stuff happening. It's easy for the center to get too thick and the walls to get too thin with this method, so just be mindful. You can see where the lip of the helmet is in this casting, this here, and if you have too much overhang over the lip, you'll have to do a lot of trimming. So it's good to also kind of keep in mind where the edges of the helmet are. Now I'm going back through and I'm gonna try and be sure that it's all the same thickness and maybe reinforce areas that got a little bit too thin. I was overcompensating for the base of the helmet, now it's a bit too thin. I can feel that the plaster is already setting up. Now that everything is evenly covered, I'm also going to kind of do a like pressing back in and using my hand to smooth and spread. Try and get all of the plaster that I can out of here. So when the plaster is this thin, you only have maybe a minute or 2 minutes to really cast it. Or when the plaster's this thick, sorry. Because I can feel it already starting to heat and not be as adherent. This here will be a thin cast, but I think it'll certainly be acceptable and workable. Yeah, at this point it's already gotten too thick. So I'm going to, for any of what's left in the bowl to be added, so I'm going to just kind of go ahead and just pat down what we've got in here, making sure that it's even. And smooth. Okay, and this cast now will need to dry for, let's say, about an hour, and preferably in a hot, dry place, and then it can be taken out. Bye!